Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Fireside Chicago, where we host fireside chats with prominent leaders from Chicago's business community and beyond, live on Zoom with Q&A. I'm your host, Tim Shump. I'm also the president and founder of Lucas James Talent Partners, a Chicago-based recruiting firm here in town. Today, I am more than honored to have our guest, Desmond Clark, here with us. Desmond is a long-term staple in Chicagoland for a long time. Obviously, I think a lot of people know him as a former NFL athlete and Chicago Bears tight end for many, many, many years. Current father, motivational speaker, consultant, and entrepreneur. He's also the author of the book, Principles of Winning: 5 Keys to Create a Standard of Excellence. We're going to get into a lot of different topics today. Des's background, what he's up to today, some of the hints and tips and tricks and code that he lives by in terms of being successful at life, with family, and in business. Ladies and gentlemen, Desmond Clark. Des, thank you so much for carving out some time for us today.
No, I appreciate you having me on, Tim, and loaning your platform so I can speak on.
Absolutely. So let's just kind of jump into it. I want to first off thank you. I have the book right here that I just made reference to. Desmond had sent it to me a few weeks ago. Anybody that's trying to be successful at life, I would venture to say, go out and buy yourself a copy. It's awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the tenets here today. So Des, let's talk about, first your time playing football. I think a lot of people know you as a Chicago Bear, staple on many, many teams, NFC Championship team, all that kind of stuff. Let's first talk about your background, though, prior to all the, football and athletic accolades that you've had. So if you could maybe kind of just take the mic and let everyone into your world a little bit.
Yeah, and I love to start off there because I always say what you see in a person now, there's a long history that led up to what you see right now. And I'm a big time fan of learning the history of someone and how they got to where they are at right now. And my history started back in Lakeland, Florida, where I'm sitting right now today. And, grew up son of Paul Clark and Rena Clark. And, when life took place here in Lakeland, my early on years, 1 through 6 or 7, were really, really good. But, after that, we had to make a transition. Mom and dad split up. Dad had a really, really tough drug addiction that lasted, maybe 11 or 12 years before he finally kicked it. But in that time, we faced a lot of struggles here. My mom trying to take care of 3 boys at the time. I do have 3 brothers now, but my youngest brother is 12 years younger than me, so he wasn't necessarily around doing a lot of that time. But just trying to make ends meet was tough in those days. And Mom did a hell of a job getting 4 boys out of the house. None of us are in jail or have records or anything like that. And we can all say it's because of the example that she set. Because with my dad, being a drug addict, we seen seen way too many things that we shouldn't have seen in those times. In my book, I talk about that story, talk about, it sent us into homelessness for a short period of time. And then once we did get a home, it wasn't, the typical home that you think about with refrigerator and food and those type of things and lights. We lived a lot of times without a refrigerator, without lights, without food, and having to use a cooler as our refrigerator. But my mom just step by step made herself better. And as she got better, our life got better. But with my dad, his life was continuously going downhill to the point where he was shot on his 3rd occasion being shot. And he was shot and blinded on the last occasion by a shotgun. And during that time, he was in such a deep depression and such an addict that, we had this conversation many, many times. He was trying to smoke enough crack to kill himself. Could never do it. So thank God he couldn't. But in those times, that's when I started to see, the worst of worst in life, being around my father and being there, helping him light his crack pipe and seeing what that is firsthand in person. And let me just go back when I say helping light his crack pipe. It wasn't like I was just, hey, I'm going to, hang around my dad so I could watch him smoke dope. It was one of those things where when I was around, he would pull me into the back room and ask me to help him get high. And, him being my dad, I just did it. So, but like I said, seeing all of that stuff, being in and out of drug houses, because the one thing that I wanted as a kid was to be around my father. And I couldn't be around him enough because of the position that he was in life and the struggles that he was having. So I would literally go around, walk all around town to go and find wherever he was at. And people they knew that I was looking for him, and they were automatically, hey, your dad's not here. He's over here at this drug house or wherever that may be. But witnessing all of that early on in life gave me a determination of what I did not want to be in life. I didn't know exactly what I want to be, but I knew what I didn't want to be. And that just helped fuel the passion to drive for success and know that in order for me to be, whatever that vision was at early age, and that vision was just to be successful. And success only meant at that time, graduate high school, go to college, get a good job. And for me to be that, I knew I had to do the opposite of what I was seeing mostly every day in my life. So that started that passion, that burning desire to do the things the right way, to just have a standard of excellence, which was built over time, and just have a vision for where I wanted to go. And that vision kept growing year by year by year as I continued to hit certain milestones in my life. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. So that's kind of where everything started from. And since then, it's just, like I said, just grown over time.
When you were going through that, I mean, you were young, and I think all of us, I would hope to say, like, when you're 1 to 5 years old, like, you don't know any better about anything. Like, my parents had stuff going on, I was 1 to 5, nowhere near that, but you just don't know. And then you kind of like, you get aware of your surroundings. What you're saying is incredible, man. And it's probably, it's rolling off the tongue now, and you can look back and say, like, hey, I've had success since then, and this is what shaped me to become where I'm at today. When you were in it, did you realize, one, how bad, maybe some of those situations were, or B, that there'd be a lot to kind of overcome throughout the years to get to where you're at today? How do you look at that time?
I didn't realize how bad it was. Me and my brothers, we talk about this all the time, and it was one of those things. It was normal. Excuse me. That was just normal life, because you don't know anything different. If you don't have anything to compare with, then that's just your experience, and that's normal. So, not only my dad, I had other family members that was drug addicts. My oldest brother started selling drugs. So that was kind of what the surroundings looked like at the time. So it was pretty normal. So yeah, I didn't really know anything different, besides when I went outside of my family to see, like, my best friend, his mom and dad are both educators, to go to friends' houses, like, man, this stuff is really nice around here. And just knowing that, okay, from everything that I've seen, I know what I want compared to what I don't want.
Yeah, keep talking about that shift, right? Because I think, and we'll probably get to it later on, but I think there's a spotlight now on the, looking at people's stories and getting outside your bubble a little bit, and realizing there's lots of people and communities out there that are experiencing some of the things that you went through. And yeah, you're a success story, but a lot of people can't kind of fight through, with the surroundings that are shaping themselves. What was that shift for you? When did it start to change to, hey, maybe I could do something about this? Mindset shift, or people along the way to kind of, take the story from what you were talking about to what you eventually became?
Yeah, I didn't know this then, but I know this about myself now, which was also present then, is that I've always accepted my present situation, my present circumstances. Always acknowledge them. And I shouldn't say accept them, always acknowledge them for what they were. I think a lot of times people, they have a tough time of saying, okay, this is the situation that I'm in right now, but this is not the situation that I have to continue to be in. A lot of people, they look at their situation as maybe this is it, instead of saying this is where I'm at right now, and I could move forward past this. But to really answer your question, there was one significant moment in my life where me and my high school basketball team, we traveled up to New York, and we're playing this basketball tournament, and I think I'm going into the 11th grade. I think maybe 11th or 12th grade I'm going into. And we had the opportunity to go up on top of the World Trade Centers when we had the Twin Towers. And not inside, but we were standing on top, out like fresh air. And that was the scariest thing in the world, but it was also one of the more inspiring things in the world. And it helped change my landscape of what was possible. Because now I'm sitting on top of the World Trade Center, I can look out, and this is New York City. I'm like, wow, it's a huge world. It is a huge world out here. And that did something for me, because I think a lot of times, if we can't get out of our own experiences, like you talked about, and we can't see anything better for ourselves, we're stuck. Because our mind can only conceive what it can see, or what it's heard about, or what has been fed some type of way. And being given that experience was huge for me, because that was the first time that I really had been out of Florida. We went to Alabama a few times, but that was just to visit relatives, and that wasn't what I wanted to do, because it was an old farm, and it was good, but nah, that's not what I wanted to do. But to have that experience really shifted my mind to, man, it's a huge world out here. And if I could just be a part of this, I can make something better for myself.
Yeah, I love hearing people's stories and what were like the instances, the people, the mindset that made them successful. I can't relate to a lot of things that you're talking about. I was a caddy growing up. I didn't grow up with any means, but I caddied for rich people that were successful. And that taught me a lot of things, but what it really taught me is these people are just people, just like me. We were all born and stuff, and we had different sets of circumstances, but they kind of figured it out. There's something along the way. A lot of people were given a lot of things, for the people that I caddied for sure. But I think that made me kind of level set, hey, maybe I could be successful one day. And then B, I've always thought that there needs to be some sort of confidence boost. There's got to be something, a trigger event. Maybe mom or dad tells you hey, you can do it one day. Something has to tell you that you can do it also. You could be successful one day. What was that for you, where you're hey, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could be successful one day. Maybe I could get out of this situation.
I think that just happened gradually over time for me. With one success came another. I know I tell a story in my book about me saying that I'm better than another basketball player on my junior high team, mm-hmm. and how I set out, because I was ridiculed. I was called everything that's not even socially acceptable to say anymore. But then I set out that entire summer to be better than this particular guy. And by the time I got into high school, now I'm a sophomore starting on varsity, and I had accomplished that little goal of, I'm better than this guy. Even though no one sees it, I know it. And I think when you have those little victories and they're validated by someone, like it was validated by my high school coach, not explicitly, but implicitly, because I was pulled up to the varsity team. I think that's how you start to build confidence. But I think confidence starts with action with you first, and you have to take action. And until you take action, there's no way that confidence can really be built in a significant, sustainable way, unless you start to take action for yourself. And that's what I did. I'm better than this guy. I just started dribbling a basketball, and I started just really focusing on, all right, my handles are going to be better than his. I'm That's it. My handles are going to be better than his. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not going to go into high school just letting that happen. And I'll work on it, and I'll continue to work on it, and I'll work on it all through high school if that's what it takes, because something about being ridiculed and somebody telling me that I wasn't triggered something that I'm going to show you that I am. And it doesn't have to be something with someone else. Now, most of my stuff is internal, like where I just want to be the best person that I can be. I put out a post yesterday, and I was talking about getting up in the morning and going to work out. And it's not necessarily about me being in shape or, looking good or being able to flex. I mean, who really loves to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go work out? Maybe a small percentage. I don't love that, but I do it to challenge myself. I do it as a personal challenge to see, am I going to be disciplined enough to do it? And through doing those little personal challenges with myself, hopefully I continue to make myself better as I continue to grow. And those are things that more so than looking at other people, now that I have these little internal battles with myself. And, as I continue to get up in the morning, it's easy, it's routine. If I don't go now, it seems like I let myself down. So just to answer your question in one sentence, the kind of,
it's almost like you're saying, like the small wins kind of like,
yeah,
they build on itself over time. That's so true.
Yeah, to build confidence, you got to have a lot of small victories over time.
I mean, in your case, we have folks on the show that really crushed it with their company, or moved up the corporate ladder, or just a lot of different things. And I think everyone's story is different. But I mean, man, the statistics on A, getting a college scholarship, B, being drafted, C, sticking around for a year or two in a league like the NFL, but having a decade-long career. I mean, it's pretty dang small, and you can't just say oh, they're just the most talent. There's mindset, there's work ethic, and then it sounds like I mean, it has to intensify along the way. You're talking about just beating someone on your high school basketball team. That seems very small in comparison to the pinnacle of your athletic career, where the journey though, how did that intensify? And then how did your mindset change when you ultimately went from making it to varsity, to maybe college athletics, to the professional ranks, to really competing within the professional ranks and so forth?
Yeah, it's definitely a different mindset as you continue to grow. I always speak about this when I was in high school, I was competing against everybody else. Because for me, like I said earlier, success was getting a college scholarship. So there's a limited amount of scholarships out there. So I gotta be one of the best of the best in my area to get that college scholarship. Then once I got to college, it was okay, now I want to be just as good as the person that's starting at my position. And then the next year it was, okay, I want to be the best receiver on the team. And then I accomplished that. And then I want to be the best receiver in the ACC conference. And then I became one of the best receivers in the ACC conference, left with the ACC records for most receptions at the time. And then I get to the NFL. And in the NFL, that's where it kind of switched to, all right, I can't compete with these guys anymore. I got to compete with myself and become the best version of me that I can be. And if I do that, if I become the best version of me, I'm going to put myself in position to win more often than not. That's not to say that you're always going to win. That's not to say that you're always going to make the team, because that's not always going to happen. But through making yourself as good as you can be, because that's all you can do. That's all you could possibly do. You can't do anything else. You're going to open up so many more opportunities. You're going to create so many more advantages for yourself, and you're going to create so many win-win situations for yourself. And it may not be that thing that you're shooting for, but I guarantee you, if you make yourself the best that you can be, you're going to win more battles than you lose.
Man, yeah, you're so spot on there. Let's just talk about just success principles in general, because your story resonates in a lot of ways, but the principles therein can be applied to anything, really, and that's that's really what you talk about in the book. One of the principles, or the chapters that I really like, is around protecting your name and your word. Like, I just think that if everybody lived, like, the society would just be what we want it to be if everyone lived by that. And you make such good points in the book. Can you speak to that, to some of the attendees and some of the listeners a little bit?
Yeah, that's an important one that I learned from Coach Joe back in high school. And really the essence of that is, what do you stand for? What are you all about? Now that you say that, make sure that you exhibit that every day of your life. And we're all humans. We're gonna fail sometime, because your name is basically your personal brand. So just like any other brand out here that we're attached to, that, hey, we go to that store because of this, or we fly on this airline because we like this. You have to look at yourself like that. Why people, especially when you are a business owner or you are a salesperson, why does someone want to work with me? Why will someone choose me over someone else? And a lot of that is just having to do with just being likable also. And then from there, you just do what you say you're going to do. And at every turn, you try your best to always, if you give your word, try to maintain it. And I think, just like you said, if we do that little simple thing, just as human beings, we can go a lot further, because people want to be around other people that's consistent and reliable. If you're consistent and reliable, I mean, you won half of the battle. I get so much of my business from people who, I haven't heard from my agent in 10 years. Or I get a referral from a guy that just happened last week. Hey, I sent this to another guy. He hadn't called in a week. Can I give it to you? And then the next day I tell him, hey, we already got things moving and it'll be wrapped up in a couple of days. It's like, are you serious? Can I send you some more people? Of course you can. But it was just me just being consistent and reliable. And that just come down to always protecting your name and your word, what you stand for, who you want people to look at you as. And you can't determine it, but you can influence it. Like, I can't tell you, you need to look at me this way, but how I interact with you on a daily basis, or when we have these interactions, and the way that I approach you and the way that I make you feel about me, that's going to influence how you look at me. And I'm very intentional about that when I deal with people. The way that I interact with them is because I want them, when they leave, to feel a certain way about that interaction.
That chapter spoke to me quite a bit. I think it's a long game strategy. So if people are thinking they woke up one day, or they like to listen to this podcast and they're just like, I want to be successful also. Let's do it. They buy the book. It's not like a quick fix. It's not a hack. And, for me, I was part of an organization for over a decade, and large company, thousands of people. And I always remember, it really irked me the wrong way when people would lie or cheat or cut corners or say they were going to do something and do the other thing. And I remember thinking, I just want everybody to think that Tim has a good head on his shoulders and that all my actions represent that. And, I didn't get a promotion the next day, and I didn't really get a promotion within the next year. But, over time, that reliability and that trust compounds itself for people. And I feel like it's such a strong point that you don't read in other success books, honestly. So strong point for sure.
Yeah. I mean, people, you can't influence people just with one interaction, or, in the short term. Like for me, I've been co-owner of my company for a year and a half now. And really, it's just over the last 6 months that I've started to get referrals. I've been the same person. The whole time, but it took a year, a little over a year, for me to follow up, for me to interact with them, for me to do renewals, for me to do everything that I had to do for people to gain that trust and say, you know what, I feel comfortable enough to send my friends and my family to you because I know who you are and what you're going to do and what you represent. So no, you said it exactly right. It is a long term. You're playing a long game. You never make short term decisions that's going to destroy a long term gain. So you could do that, but over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20 years of trying to build a business or build a brand is not gonna pay off in the long run.
Another really just portion of your story that just resonates is just dealing with adversity. You know, there's never like a straight line to the right for success where like each day is better than the next and I'll just follow Desmond's principles and like everything's going to be dandy for me. There's going to be setbacks. There's a lot of setbacks this year. I think we've all had setbacks, and I think it's like the mindset and the resiliency. How do you speak about adversity, dealing with it, allowing to feel it, and then, you know, eventually fighting through adversity, regardless of what it is?
Yeah, I think we all understand intellectually that life just doesn't happen like you said. Every day is going to be better than the next. We know it's going to be ups and downs, right? We know that we're going to hit down periods in our life. We may get sick, kid may get sick. You know, we may get laid off from a job, or you know, the spouses may be arguing, or whatever. You're going to hit downs in life. They're going to come, and I think 100% we can agree on that. But what I don't understand is when they do come, why we don't embrace those moments also. Because here's how I've dealt with it over time. And I spoke a little bit about this, is that you have to embrace the present moment. Good or bad, you have to embrace it. When I was cut from the Denver Broncos in 2002, I was just coming off 51 catches and 6 touchdowns. Tied Tony Gonzalez for the most touchdowns by a tight end that year. I'm in my 3rd year, up and coming, just signed that $1.2 million contract, and I'm going to be the starter next year. They brought in Shannon Sharp. I'm not going to be the starter next year. They brought him back to the Denver Broncos. I'm not going to be the starter. And then in camp, guess what? I broke my arm. I have the scar here to show for it. Okay, so not only am I not going to be the starter, I'm going to be out for 6 games, at least. Oh, they just told me to bring my playbook with me to go see Coach Shanahan. I'm not on the team anymore. They just cut me after having a great season. And here's the thing about it. Since I had that great season, me and my wife, we said, all right, let's go ahead and start this family. I'm going to get paid next year. You know, everything is falling in place. Then I get cut. And now I got to go home and tell her, we just had bought a house that same year. I got to go home and say, I don't have a job now. That's hard to do. And it's tough. And anxiety and everything else comes with that. But here's the thing. You can't change it. You are where you are. And it's not about whose fault it is. It was no one's fault that I got released from the Denver Broncos. Who am I going to blame? Only thing I could say now is it's my responsibility to take care of my family. And I accepted the moment for what it was. Now, let me just back up. I'm human. I was pissed. I was scared. I was like, what's happening next? But once I got past that point, which took about 36 hours, and I got picked up by the Miami Dolphins for a third of what I was going to be paid, I said, I'm going to embrace this moment, go to Miami, and then I'm not the starter in Miami. I'm 3rd string. I said, the thing that I know I can do is I can play football. And regardless if I'm starting or not, my standards are my standards. I'm going to be the same person, the same football player, given whatever opportunities I have to put myself in position to get back to where I want to go. And it happened. All I was able to do with the Miami Dolphins was play special teams. I caught 2 passes after a year of catching 51. But I played so well in special teams that the Chicago Bears noticed. And when they noticed it, they knew that I could be a good tight end. What they didn't know is my passion for the game and the character that I have for football. And ultimately, they said, besides me being a good tight end, what they noticed with me with the Miami Dolphins is what ultimately made them want to offer me a long-term contract and bring me in as a starter. So to answer your question, when bad things happen, we have to embrace those times just like we want to party when the good times happen. And once we embrace those things, we got to ask ourselves the question, now what? Now what am I going to do? And the first thing that we have to do is remember who we are, the standards that we have for each other, for ourselves, and make sure that we maintain those standards as we continue to dig our way out of whatever hole that we're in. No matter if it's your fault, somebody else's fault, I don't care whose fault. Whose responsibility is it to get yourself out of it? It's only yours.
Yeah, I mean, the word adversity just speaks to 2020. I feel like there's going to be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people like listening to this or watching this, and maybe they lost their job or lost a loved one to COVID, or all the social injustice and racial inequality. And there's so much, and it could be something as small as like, hey, I thought I was going to have a big year and I'm going to have a small year. And there's a huge range there, especially when you're talking about our society. And I feel like there's this like fight or flight moment. I've been talking about this a lot with my team. We're in an industry that's been impacted by COVID, and you talk about like accepting the situation for what it is. And I think it's just that, like, accepting that this is happening, and how you react to it is kind of on you. Like, that's the choice that you have. You could accept it and move forward, or you could flight. You could find a reason or opportunity to kind of get out of what you had set out to do. And I think a lot of people are dealing with a lot of those emotions right now.
Mm-hmm.
I always
And
like
it's
to,
tough. It's tough, man.
yeah,
And let me just say that I don't want anybody out there to think that I don't understand the gravity of the situation that we're in here in 2020. It's freaking tough. Like, and I know there's people out there that's without a job and trying to figure out how they're gonna pay the rent, how they're gonna pay the mortgage. Kids gotta eat. But I'm gonna go back and say the same thing. You're in this situation. You're here. Now you got to figure out, what can you do? What can I do to make this situation as good as possible as I continue to move forward and try to rebuild? That's all we have. That's all you got. But I just want people to know that, yeah, the understanding is there that it's tough, but just like every other tough situation that we've been through, we're still here. So at the other end of this thing, you're still going to be here. And you want to make sure at the other end of this thing that you're in position to now receive the gains that's going to come after this thing is over.
man. Yeah, I think a lot of people need to hear that message right now. There's probably people that are listening that's, you do a lot of motivational speaking. I hope they reach out to you to talk to their teams or something, because that's what's going on right now. I see it. I'm in a people business. There's a lot of candidates that are calling Lucas James Talent Partners right now. And there's a lot of companies trying to figure this out. And yeah, I think it's to your point, a lot about mindset, accepting the reality of the situation, and then how you move forward from there. So let's speak to that a little bit. So you do a lot of speaking, you do a lot of consulting with companies. Speaking about the principles of the book, more recently, there's been a spotlight on the social injustice and racial inequality. And when we spoke, we've gotten to know each other over the last several weeks, but when we spoke initially, I know that you're getting a lot of taps on the shoulder and calls about this, and speak on this topic. And then your personal story, resonates a lot, but it hasn't been in the spotlight before. That there's people going through a lot of hardships in our country. Can you speak to that a little bit, and maybe some of the talks that you're giving around this topic?
Yeah, I'll just speak on my personal story for a second. What happened back in 2015 with me and my family, and I'll keep it shorter.
It's okay.
Basically, my wife and my stepson, they faced some very nasty racial things that happened to them, two different places. My son at his school, my wife at a Target store. Well, they were basically called the N word, and they reacted. Well, my wife reacted, and then when it happened to my stepson, me and my wife reacted to it, and we both got charged with uh, me for disorderly conduct, all misdemeanor charges, right? And just prior to that, months prior, I was being asked by the state's attorney to go out and speak on his behalf to Black and brown people in his community, because he knew who I was. He knew what I stood for. He knew the message that I spoke on. So he thought it was good enough to approach me to go and speak for him on his behalf. But when all of this stuff went down, when I reached out to him, no response besides, I can't get involved. It's a conflict of interest. But what I know is that the state's attorney has unilateral authority for when charges get dropped on his desk to say, we're going to prosecute this or we're not going to prosecute this. And fine, if you're going to prosecute it, that's fine. You got to do your job and do what's right. But the thing that really kind of shined a light on that situation and how we were viewed in that community is when we got a plea deal from the state's attorney's office of, if you move back to Florida, we'll drop all the charges. And to me, I'm thinking, me move back to Florida? How about the lady who called my wife a nigger bitch? She's in your community. You didn't ask her to move back. She's the one who also told my wife that you probably don't even belong here. Let's talk about the kid that told my son that his family hangs from trees and try to provoke him into a fight. Let's talk about another school administrator telling my son if he wants to act like a criminal, they're going to treat him like a criminal. None of these people are being asked to move away. But we got misdemeanor charges in all of the stuff that me and my family we've done in this community. You're asking us to move away? That told me all I needed to know. And from a guy who had to check off on, yeah, we could give him that plea deal, from that same guy who was asking me to speak to his base when, before all of these charges, like I say, months before. It just made me think about this. If they'll do that to me, what are they going to do to someone else who has no resources, who don't have a following, can't go out and galvanize rallies and bring attention to this? What are they going to do to him or her? So when I was asked to speak on social injustice, honestly, initially I said no because I was a little intimidated to do it. But then I came back and I said, yes, I'm going to do it just for this reason. I felt like that story that I just told would empower more people and bring more understanding for other people. Because the thing that I kept getting was, wow, that happened to you? So now people see, if it could happen to him, just like I thought, what's happening to everybody else? And now when I'm out speaking on social injustice, there's a few things that I always hit on. I always have to go back to my personal story and then talk about the history of how we got here, the history of, being quote unquote freed, but then we're free to what? To nothing. And then after being freed, all of the black codes and the laws that were put in place, the vagrancy laws, if you don't have a job, you go to jail. But if you sign this contract and come work for me, now you have a job. But if you break this contract, now you got to go to jail. And they took advantage of the 13th Amendment, which said, hey, you are free unless you are in prison, and then basically you're a slave again. So they made it a way where, you could become a slave again if you didn't work with cheap labor. They didn't repeal the act, Special Field Act 15, that designated, a whole plot of land from South Carolina all the way through Florida around the coast that was supposed to be set aside for blacks to go and settle the 40 acres and a mule. That's what people call it. Never was enforced. So many things over time with the New Deal, with the HOLC, homeowners loan corporation when they started redlining different communities, so money didn't go back into certain communities, and we know what certain communities those are. In the racially homogeneous communities, the suburbs, the money went there, and there was development. There couldn't be home ownership. They wouldn't lend to blacks, and what people don't understand a lot, which I get because they didn't live in the late 1800s and the early 1900s to understand that what we're seeing today, the frustration of what we're seeing today, and the point of the frustration is that blacks have been set back so far over the last 6, 7 generations that it's not a fair and even game. If we got to run a 100-yard dash, we got to start at the goal line, where some other people get to start at the 50-yard line. And it's just because of everything that happened from 1619 to 1865 when they freed the slaves, and all the laws that were meant to push things along, but then were undercut by different laws, which slowed progression down for Black America. And yeah, I got into a long heated battle on Twitter with someone saying we got to live in the now. Well, yeah, we can live in the now, but we also got to understand what the past and what the history has done, and why, there's this huge upswelling of emotion and passion right now. And everybody's got to be willing to understand that in order for us to go forward. And what I've experienced over the last month or so is that people don't know the history, and that's why they don't understand. They don't know how Black America has been pushed back and made to, hold on, let us get ours first, and then you get the leftovers. And so economically, it's no equality there because of basically how the laws were passed and interpreted, and also played out over time. The one most damning stat that I could throw out there is, for every $100 that a white American family has, a Black American family has $5. And what can you say about that? Oh, they don't work hard. They're less educated. No, it's systematic that it turned out that way. So now, when you put my $5, which I know that I'm more well off than most people, but just say I represent Black America, put my $5 against $100 for white America, and we playing a game of Monopoly, who's going to win that game every time? And that's what we're fighting right now. That's what we're trying to make more equitable, the schooling systems. One of the things here in Lakeland, Lincoln Elementary School, that's in a Black neighborhood. It's in a neighborhood where I spent a lot of time. Rundown school, and now just recently they made it an academy. But they didn't make it for the people in the neighborhood anymore. Now there's a lottery system. And my thought is this: okay, you never put money in the school before when it was just for the Black neighborhoods that surround it. But when you put money into the school, now it's for everybody. Now we got to go through this whole lottery system. So now, that just speaks volumes to me, and how things are done in America. And it's not overt in your face like it used to be in the 60s and 1800s. It's more through the laws, and more through how those local, and more so local laws, how those things are carried out, and just the procedures that we don't see.
It is such a complex scenario that we're in, and I feel like it took kind of what it took to shine the light on this topic, right? And you and many others have been living it for a long time. My personal kind of like journey with this is to seek to understand, because I feel like there's not a lot of people that understand the history or personal stories or anecdotes, or really how other people live, unless there's platforms and there's voices, and we can kind of get that word out there to really start making change. I would venture to say, if there's folks in school systems, business owners, HR folks, I know a lot of people kind of listen to this, reach out to Desmond on this. Great speaker, great topic, comes highly recommended. We're running out of time, Desmond. We probably don't have enough time for, go ahead.
Can I say one more thing to that point?
Of course.
When I do give that talk, you got to tell about the history, but then you also got to give or help people create solutions and actionable items to move forward. That's the second part of that speech, and I like to use how NFL teams work when we talk about that, because I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian. You know what? The best players are going to make the team. And if you got a quarterback that has a receiver wide open and it's to win the game, I don't care if they had a argument the day before. The quarterback's throwing the ball to the receiver no matter what, because they all are pulling from the same side and they're all trying to win. And that's where we have to come together in this country, and more so, but also in corporate America and just everyday lives. That, man, we're all pulling. We got to pull from the same side of the rope.
I hear you. I love that. Desmond, just to kind of close out our conversation here, tell people like what you're up to today, where you're spending your time. I know you have the book, you're doing some speaking and consulting, and your business, of course. So maybe kind of get everybody up to speed on where you're spending your time and then how they can follow you and reach out to you if need be.
Yeah, I'm spending most of my time right here at this desk behind me, inside this garage. But working on a lot of things. Of course, I have my insurance company, the insurance people, where I do the property and casualty insurance. That's most of my day. And then also doing a lot of things to create opportunities to speak, doing a lot of speaking. Last week, I just flew out to Vegas and recorded my first video training course. So that'll be out in October. So a lot of good things going, but more so, man, just trying to be that person to keep putting out great messages and try to inspire people to be their best, and just trying to stay focused for myself on being the change that I want to see, more so than anything. And yeah, man, that's about it. Just trying to stay relevant, stay hyperactive, and continue to create opportunities for me and my family.
I love it. You're doing a great job. You're affecting a lot of lives in a positive manner. If you're interested, check out his book, Principles of Winning: 5 Keys to Create a Standard of Excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, Desmond Clark. Des, have a good rest of the week, man. Nice seeing you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.